Well, we're finally here, and I'm telling you, Jova, it's always a frightful sight to see what goes on Halloween night. Well, specifically the second part of what we are about to see today, because it's slightly cheating in a way. Originally, I wanted to pick the last Predator movie that we hadn't done yet, Prey. But then I kind of remember that part of the packaging era of the Disney movies tended to have a short included that takes place in its climax, in fact, the most important part of it, during Halloween night. So you know what? Let's actually do that. This is 1949's The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. So as you can imagine, the first half of this will technically be just there because it's presence. It's an adaptation of the British tale, if I recall correctly, The Wind in the Willows. While the second one instead is an adaptation of the American tale, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Fun fact, actually, thanks to your choice, Tio, you have effectively picked what could count as a Halloween pick, but thanks to the first half, could also technically count as a Christmas pick.
Great, so I'm filling in for what Wibbs did last year with Black Christmas, I guess. Um,
Beautiful.
but yeah, again, not much to say. If you don't know any about the stories, already know because there have been other adaptations. Personally, The Wind in the Willows is one of those stories where I really, really should just try to get the book and properly read it because there have been a couple of adaptations and I only know very little about it, even though it's a very famous story. As for the Sleepy Hollow, one of its most recent, relatively recent adaptation is the Tim Burton movie done in 1999, which I will talk more about during the final cuts because it's poignant towards in regards to how much of an adaptation it is. Um, as usual for the packaging movies, four different directors, probably sprinkled two and two each. A couple of voice actors, but not that much in this case. We have two major narrators, one Basil Rathbone, as in the major live-action Sherlock Holmes of the old days, and second, Bing Crosby of all people, a jazz singer, and being an actor in a fuck ton of other movies. You probably know him better for White Christmas. Um, I can talk more about as the movie goes on. So, start before the usual RKO Radio Pictures, logo. It's probably the same even if you're seeing it on Disney Plus. So start before that in three, two, one, click. Last warning that I need to give. Those futures, a character who has an obsession among things. One of these is to be obsessed with a type of vehicle that is called the Vardo, which is a Romani vehicle. And this is being done, a movie done in 1949. You can expect to be having an outdated term to describe the Romani, so this is basically your warning. Don't be too alarmed if it pops up out of nowhere.
So, I know Walt wasn't the biggest fan of the war packaging era for obvious reasons, but I forget, was this one of the packaging era films he actually liked working on?
I don't know. I honestly don't know about these particular details, if I had to be honest.
But yes, the first half of this movie even got its own ride adaptation.
The characters also appeared, in other properties. We've seen them in the past. Some characters from The Wind in the Willows have showed up in Mickey's Christmas Carol. And eventually, I can assume at least a couple of them showed up also in House of Mouse. The Toad character from The Wind in the Willows showed up as a quick cameo in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. The moment, we enter Toonland, I think it's called, Toontown. And lastly, the characters have showed up in what's it called? Once Upon a Studio. More on that later. So our framing
Fun
device this
fact.
time around is a live action library. We don't really see people around, we just talk.
It's a good old Disney custom, start in live action with the opening of a book.
Although in this case we had elaborate more on that. Go on, Drova.
So, fun fact actually, these two halves of the movie were originally supposed to be their own full length features. Of course, stop me if you heard this before, World War II swallowed up a lot of Disney's workforce. So, yeah,
Not too
they were
surprising.
they were truncated into these two ones. Also, fun fact, originally Jiminy Cricket was supposed to actually play a role in this movie. he got dropped, but as you can tell, that got brought back for fun and fancy free.
Well, that was done before this one. Because this is actually the last of the packaging era movies before Cinderella, 1950.
In fact, in regards to these movies, these were originally suggested to be put around stuff like, some of these were going to be merged with stuff that would show up in other packaging films like Melody Time or whatnot. Like, Wills was originally supposed to actually be joined up with the retelling of the legends of Cowboy Pecos Bill.
Huh.
Our first tale takes place in jolly old Britain, narrated by Basil Rathbone.
Again, if you know anything about the stories of Sherlock Holmes, he was the most prominent live-action actor for the old movies, which were done by Fox, which means that now Disney owns those too, by the way. How much are you familiar with the story in itself, Jova?
You mean
With
the original
Willows,
book that this?
Yeah, and possibly maybe some of the adaptations.
I will say I am most familiar with just this movie. I have looked up some differences from this in the book, but yeah, no, my familiarity mostly extends to this adaptation.
So yeah, this is technically a type of world where humans and anthropomorphic animals coexist, but the anthropomorphic animals are in scale, properly sized. Although,
I will say,
in this case, the major character in this, Toad, Mr. Toad, actually owns an entire villa. Jeez.
It's interesting, actually, because if anything, it was more so the side characters that would show up in more stuff rather than our main character, Mr. Toad. But it is an interesting case, though, the idea where I think I was more familiar with the side characters than I was the main character due to them showing up much more and stuff.
I gotta love it. This movie, so far, there's a particular obsession with those, close-up shots that seem sort of static are overly detailed compared to the animated ones.
I guess Disney figured, hey, if we have to cut corners, let's at least still look good where we can.
Alright, let me check the cast in this. Campbell Grant as Angus McBadger. There you go. The accountant. John McLeish he's later for another role, sorry. The rat character is played by Claude Allister. I think I heard of him already. Oh, this was one of the last things he did. Mostly a very early cinema age era actor. The mole is played by Colin Campbell. While our mysterious, absent for now.
I can imagine.
Told is played by Eric Blore. Gone.
I can imagine that Ron Musker and John Clements took inspiration from this when making The Great Mouse Detective, because the designs of these two feel very much like beta versions of them.
I actually don't know if the characters were supposed to have this kind of design even in the original tale. I know that it was, a tale aimed at children, so I can imagine, it had still a bit of, variety in appearance. But it's very possible. I can tell that, at the very least, Sam Raimi and Tim Burton probably watched the Sleepy Hollow short.
Remember, it's much like how Nick from Zootopia is clearly inspired by Robin Hood.
But yeah, here's our main character, Mr. Toad, and well, he is causing Mr. Badger no shortage of headaches with all the destruction he causes, which, of course, rakes in the bills.
Why would a toad need such a huge carriage? He's like...
Because he's rich.
And obsessed. If anything, if I remember correctly, the story itself is a sort of a, more light-hearted, type of jab at the British, higher class of the epoch.
I can show you the world.
Except in British. Seal the horses by J. Patrick Manley.
Man, this is some of the most British voice acting I've heard in a Disney movie.
I know, right?
So let me get this straight. Some animals walk upright and wear clothes, but other animals go around naked, having to pull our carriages for us.
As God forsaking us.
Like,
again, Jova, don't think about it.
they're talking about selling a character who can talk. I mean, granted, it's kind of up there with the whole, hey, Pluto's a regular dog, but then you got Goofy.
Yeah, unfortunately, something new catches Toad's attention.
So much so that it gave him back his pants.
Oh,
But they're gone again.
There are a couple of other animation errors in this.
Oh boy.
How familiar are you with this first story here? Have you ever read the book or seen any of the adaptations?
Never read the book, but I am aware of this.
Yeah,
Is it?
Toad is portrayed with an actual mania, obsession, in this case about motor cars now.
So is it like a well-known fable over in Britain, Shiroi?
Can't answer that.
Let me see. Yeah, it's considered a classic children's novel. British novelist Kenneth Graham, first published in 1908. I can imagine it's probably taught in some elementary schools.
Like I said, these are some of the most thickest British accents I've heard in a Disney movie.
Yeah, actually, let me check again. Eric Blore, who voices Toad. Yeah, all the voice actors in this case are British for this first segment. This was also one of the last things he did.
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Toad. You're too insane to be left on the loose.
Also, you're in the UK. You need a license for that.
Basically, we'll just let him.
He's rich. He doesn't
out
care.
Of course. Right.
Well, crud.
You fucking Amateurs! You didn't even close the windows? Fucking amateurs!
It's literally a case of his attorney. They lost sight for him for 1 second and he got arrested like Maya.
Speaking of Ace Attorney,
Yeah, of course, this is in a British court, so everyone needs to have a powder wig or something.
And don't mind the fact that I look and sound incredibly evil for some reason.
No, don't worry, Pedro. He's not evil. He's just a lawyer.
what's the difference?
I know.
Yeah, what's the difference?
Let's see. The district attorney here is played by John McLeish. Like I mentioned, created as John Ployart. But again,
I feel like I've heard.
most of these people have done mostly movies in the 20s and 30s. This was basically a sort of a last occasion for them to voice act before they retired or died away. Man, this episode of Law and Order sucks.
Yeah.
Objection, Your Honor. The prosecutor is badgering the witness and doesn't allow the witness
Pedro,
to
I
answer the
think
question.
that's the pun.
Also, it's his witness.
Oh shit!
Also, damn, it's not like we're used to media where that happens all the time. This is par for the course at this point.
That's a liar moment. Like he's badgering the witness. It's his witness. My God.
Also,
Could this horse be any more British?
Yeah.
Okay, now this is actually not his witness. So, objection, Your Honor, badgering the witness.
Yeah, fuck off.
Yeah.
Oh, look, it's one of the weasels from Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, this is literally where they debuted.
Although in this case, we have a more generic appearance, while the one in When Roger Rabbit had more, distinct designs and personality. But they're supposed to still be the same characters.
Yeah, the idea is that they got design upgrades with each time. They would also show up in
Okay, what?
Mickey's The Prince and the
Toad,
Pauper.
this is not an episode of Top Gear. Stop
we sure?
inhaling exhaust fumes.
Are we sure this is not an allegory for drug addiction?
Yeah.
Hey, sure. Do you think this is abnormal even for drug addiction?
Is that why? Is that why his best friend's a horse, so he can get in on that glue sniffing?
I guess
God.
so.
Sorry.
Wow.
Of course, you need a witness.
Yes, he flipping sold them his home just to get that flipping car.
Wait, the estate is only worth £100,000. That doesn't sound like much.
I mean, considering the time this was made, that
I guess.
The original
probably a
book,
lot of money.
yeah, the original book was early 1900, so
Let's see, £100,000. And what year? 18, what now?
1908.
1908. Let's see, 100,000 British pounds back in 1908 would be 15,075,92 pounds.
All right, that makes a lot more sense.
Also, you can tell this was animated by at least some people who did Alice in Wonderland because a lot of the character design resembles that.
Well, yeah, the nine old men.
Oh, it was still them. I didn't know.
The nine old men remained all the way up until the late 70s, slightly early 80s.
Didn't we technically have some of the old nine men even working on Black Cauldron?
Yeah, I think
Yes.
we did mention we commented on at least one or two of them.
Mm-hmm.
Piece of shit.
So, yeah, the guy is such a dick that, he's like, nope, it was a stolen car still. Which, when you get down to it, he's just being a dick because, dude, he literally sold them the haul, essentially. They could have let him off the hook and they still would have kept it.
Also, what kind of advert? I spied an advert in a corner. It was like, for real ale top hat. Like, sure. I'm pretty sure there are better ways to sell it. Case closed. So yeah, I guess Jova at a point. Now the following takes place during Christmas period.
Yep.
I guess that's why Rat and Moldy showed up in Mickey's Christmas Carol. As in, there's a slight connection of sorts. Also, was the Tower of London still used in that era? Holy shit.
Well, Merry Christmas.
Sure.
Bit late.
I mean, I guess it's better than sending a file in the cake.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
I think we instead of putting him in a prison, we should put him in a mental asylum.
Rich people never reform.
This truly is. So this is literally a story about the dilemmas of like a rich person's dilemmas, basically.
Hey, the dogs from Bambi made a cameo, I guess. Like,
Cute. Yeah.
What do they even plan to do about that?
Ah, that's a nice looking vehicle. Sure would be a shame if somebody tried to steal it.
I get the idea Mr. Toad was actually a character written by dweebs during its
Yeah.
time travel escapades.
You need a license for that too.
You want to take him in alive, right?
I'm starting to question that, Jova.
And then they drowned.
At least the police seem to have bought it. Apparently, they were not able to see anyone dropping from the bridge.
To be fair, he is actually pretty tiny.
Oh, maybe we
It's
don't.
also dark. Yep,
Also,
he's dead.
yeah, he did not think this through.
Well, that was a short. Actually, this was a short, so would have been a bit too dark if it ended here. So thankfully, we can continue.
I actually do wonder what this would have been like had it been a full extended movie
Like
like
I said,
originally
Jova, I
planned.
still know not much about the original tale. I know that was a live-action CGI version, apparently. It's a true Christmas miracle.
Yeah.
It's a Christmas inconvenience.
Fuck the police.
I stole a train. I ain't afraid of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's also why he lied in court.
Mm-hmm. When you get down to it again, he could have just told the truth and they probably would have been better off. But yeah.
Hi.
Now, while I'm not as familiar with the original tale, I do believe that the horse character is an original addition, since in the original tale, Toad actually escapes because he gets sympathy of the Gaoler's daughter, who helps him actually escape disguised as a washerwoman.
Yeah, never mind the vehicle theft and stuff. Like,
Leroy, Toad is innocent of what he has been accused of.
This truly is on his
Exactly.
attorney case. So yeah, the entire plan actually is to retake, well, not technically retake the hall, but at least steal the deed. I can imagine they took some inspiration from this when making the climax of, Robin Hood, Disney's Robin Hood, because there are some similarities, mainly that it's supposed to be a stealth mission where isn't that much dialogue, and we had to rely on, just their action. Okay. Must have been the wind.
Yeah.
Of course, it's a British villa with a secret passage for a back entrance.
Hmm.
they're allowed here, I believe. I guess. I don't know.
Guess since they work for Winky.
I was gonna say, like, you'd think a building like this would have enough beds for everyone, but no, I think they're all just passed out drunk.
Yeah.
Probably.
I mean, it is supposed to still have someone celebrating Christmas, so yeah. Well, shit.
So, one other change apparently from the original story. In here, the heroes have to escape with the deed. In the original, they legit just beat the crap out of the weasels and punted them off the estate.
Mm-hmm.
That looked like it hurt.
How the hell is this paper plane going so far? Like,
Cartoon logic,
It's a
Pedro.
very, very, very well made paper airplane.
Disney physics.
There we go.
Well, it's gonna be a wreck after all this.
Apparently that's enough to convince the authorities, I guess.
And he even got his property back.
Uh-huh.
Zeroy, he's reformed now, for sure and for well, for good.
Yeah, Happy New Year or something.
And right on cue.
Oh, planes now. Fantastic. Pretty sure McBadger has been dead for so many times this movie.
Your tax money is going to fix that, you know. Just saying.
Alright, that's it for the first story, but now let's actually get to the reason why we're here. Which means basically Radbon passes the baton to, again, Bing Crosby. So fucking weird.
It's to emphasize how we're going from Britain to America. Now, here's the story you're probably more familiar with. In fact, believe it or not, this half of the movie is so popular that some people only remember this movie for this half.
The story is set, if I recall correctly, at the end of the 1700s, so, you know, still the time of the Manifested Destiny, as it was called.
In that little New York area known as the Sleepy Hollow.
What I particularly like about this story, particularly this adaptation, is that yes, it starts with that bit of ominous, but then it remains mostly light-hearted. Actually, for 2/3 of it, actually, you know, this is mostly a technically speaking, this is mostly a comedy. It's the last bit that's there to traumatize the kids, so we'll get to that. For the time being, our fine specimen of protagonist, not even kidding. Ichabod Crane, transferring to be the schoolmaster of the town.
Now, if I recall correctly, this version of Ichabod Crane is made to be more of a jerk than he usually is.
Oh no, he normally is that in the book, Jova. It's the Tim Burton version that actually makes him more of a heroic figure. No, the principal, you know, the strong suit of this story is the ambiguity. It depicts a set of protagonists which are grey in terms of morality, one reason or another. You know, our protagonist Ichabod has his reason to be, you know, not a likable hero. The actual antagonist of the story, the human antagonist of the story, you know, he's technically a jerk, but it feels more understandable in some way. In this case here, Brom Bones, aka Prototype Gaston. No, not even
Pretty
kidding.
much right down to the mannerisms and the actual design. I would not be surprised if the makers of Beauty and the Beast took inspiration from him for Gaston.
Brom is the town hero, basically. He helps everyone else, does community service, helps the animal. Again, don't misunderstand. He still is a bit of a jerk, but he's nowhere near as monstrous as Gaston eventually will be. So again, that's the ambiguity of the sorts. And he gives alcohol to animals. Okay, I guess there's that.
So you're probably the one most familiar with the original tale. How accurate is this whole thing? Pretty much on
Actually,
point?
oh, pretty much, yes. It has a bit of emphasis on slapstick for comedic effect, but when it comes to telling the story, it's pretty much there.
Right down to
Including
the character mannerisms.
and the layer of ambiguity, yes. And yeah,
But
because
yeah,
Bing Crosby was an accomplished singer. Again, you probably know him better for White Christmas. They have him narrate the entire thing and even sing all of the songs.
good use of your actors and singers.
Also, that bit where he basically steered away the Black Cat. That's a bit of foreshadowing for one of his characteristics, but it's not important for now.
Yeah, if our character Bing Crosby also voices Ichabod in this.
It's more of a case of there are some minor bits where the characters do have a bit of an exclamation, where they voice act a bit, but otherwise it's Bing Crosby mixing the narration by saying the characters said this.
Yeah.
And yeah, despite being quite skinny, Ichabod Crane has instead the appetite. I have to assume he has a tapeworm or something, because that food has to go somewhere.
And yes, he's something of a local heartbreaker.
Yeah, with that appearance, I guess his name is Leisure Suit Larry. Oh,
The
also check this
charisma.
out. Classy.
Ah?
Even more classy. He's not gonna abuse physically the students as long as their mother invite him to dinner.
How about a little parent-teacher conference? So yeah, again, to emphasize how American it is, there is very much a jazz theme with this short.
Which again was the genre where Bing Crosby was specialized the most in, so...
Now again, I do have to wonder how they would have handled the adaptation if it had been a full-length feature film, again, as was originally planned for
Probably
this,
a lot more padding, because I can tell you that this hits pretty much everything. Even the original book was not that much long as a story.
I wonder if they may have done the Disney thing and maybe extended it more
Probably.
to the point where we actually got more of say,
Personality of the characters and so on, yes.
and maybe they would have done what Tim Burton did and actually made Ichabod more the hero to defeat the Headless Horseman. I don't know. Like, Disney always were... Well, okay. When it came to their full-length feature films, Disney did add some nuance and changes sometimes. I can see why they would have wanted to play it straight pretty much for it being a short. Because, yeah, I'll admit, it's kind of hard for me to imagine how they would actually extend the story as it is. So the men hated him, but the ladies loved him.
And Ichabod doesn't seem to care at the end of the day, as long as he gets to eat, I guess. And here,
Maybe that's why the
Hey,
men hated him.
Cinderella.
yeah, not even kidding. Again, we are having the Leisure Suit Larry effect, where most of the characters are more portrayed and more cartoon fed, and here comes the love interest, which is drawn in a more, not photorealistic, but, rotoscoped kind of way.
Like, that is flipping Cinderella.
Yeah.
Katrina Van Tassel, the daughter of basically the owner of the town.
And of course, she's the local heartthrob. She's even got her own singing chorus to show you that.
And apparently she relishes in the attention.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's part of
yeah.
that's part of the layer of ambiguity. The story doesn't specify it, but it raises the question. Is Katrina genuinely interested potentially in the love of one of her suitors, or is she just taking advantage, either from her nobility or because she relishes in that? It doesn't really give a concrete answer, but it delects in having the question.
Yeah, it's a short that pretty much will go in that regard of saying, hey, are these people jerks, or are they just people who don't exactly get their points across as well? Don't get me wrong, Ichabod himself is a bit of a jerk, but there's nothing particularly monstrous about the guy.
Well, not monstrous, but later on we'll get a proper confirmation about, just how much not of a nice guy he is. Yeah, that's the thing. Maybe Ichabod does love Katrina, but to quote a bit partially Dan Backslide from the Dover Boys, Ichabod is the kind of guy that basically said, "How I love her, father's money." Specifically, the property of Van Tassel, because again, they own pretty much the entirety of the city, having the crops and everything. So, engaging with Katrina will be basically inheriting all the properties. It's still implied that, Ichabod still loves Katrina, even in a romantic way, but it's pretty much clear that he's playing the long game.
It's in a way where you could argue he does love her, but he does have additional reasons.
Yeah.
I guess, okay, if this were a full-length feature film, my guess is that part of his arc may have been realizing that he loves her just for her and not the money.
Possible. That will have partially also to change how the story ends, which we'll get to that in a few.
I will say, I'm somebody who does like the Tim Burton
Me
movie.
too. Again, it's still for the purpose of adapting the story. It's technically not a good adaptation because you can tell Tim Burton read or saw either this version or something else, and still decided to basically write his own fan fiction about it, more or less. It's just that it's damn well entertaining.
Okay, to be fair, I don't think it's a Disney adaptation unless you're
No.
talking about it being an adaptation of the
The
original
original
tale.
tale, yes. Me and Deji saw it again recently. It's a combination of Paramount and some other indie company. Yeah. And again, there's on the other side of the coin, again, Brown Bones is technically the town hero, and technically speaking, he's not doing that much kind of a damage, but he's still kind of a bully at the end of the day.
Interestingly enough, just like Gaston, he also has a dark black horse, which a lot of Disney villains tended to have.
In the book, the horses actually do have a name. That one is called, I think, Dynamite or something. For the purpose of the story, it doesn't matter, so that's why we did not call them here.
And a chin that could kill someone.
Oh, wait. Of course.
Classic.
You could have just as easily, passed through the whatever.
Oh no, Pete, don't you see? It's to show how much you care. So yeah, because this is basically
See, the thing is,
sorry, go on.
you say that, Teo, but if I did this with Vanessa, she would just tell me, "You idiot! You could have just passed through there. Why did you just destroy a perfectly fine piece of clothing?"
The
He's so in love,
motivation
he
of
got the Sonic
love.
Run animation.
Basically.
Yes.
Yeah, basically this initial set of the story serves also to have wacky hijinks in which Brom Bones has to be on the receiving end of Ichabod's
Yeah, I love that. I love that. You can tell that she's just adoring the fact that these two are fighting for her over her.
Eh.
She's just enjoying this clearly. Like, okay, let's see. She's basically just playing the long game. See where this goes.
Get some love and laughs out of it.
It's also worth noting that, at the end of the day, there's also the fact that Brom is still,
Oh my god.
again, being the town hero, he could still probably make mincemeat out of, Ichabod if he could just get his hands on him, but decides still to take, either something happens in the way, or he decides to, not go immediately, because otherwise it would be too much of an unfair fight.
I just realized something, Shiori.
Mm-hmm.
She's just like Bella Swan. She's purposely egging these two on just for kicks.
Oh god.
Yeah, stay there.
Smooth.
Very smooth.
See,
Dude.
See?
she knows that's
She
gonna set it
knows.
off.
No, that's the thing. Yeah, she knows exactly what's going on.
Stalker behavior.
That's the thing, Shiori. Like, I get the feeling she likes it. I mean, she doesn't. She doesn't seem at all. She doesn't. I mean, does she seem bothered by this to you,
Also,
Shiori?
I'm pretty sure the priority for Brom was to get his hands on Ichabod before, get
Yeah.
back on Katrina.
Enjoy those splinters.
Ishira, you asked in our commentaries of the movies based on her work about like what kind of life and education Stephanie Meyer had. Maybe she grew up with this movie, and this is her
Taking the wrong lessons from it.
Taking the wrong lessons from it.
Yeah. Hidden talents or just immense luck?
Maybe both. So yeah, now it's time to get properly into the thick of it, because, again, I mentioned the climax of the story takes place, of course, on Halloween night. Katrina herself sent an invitation to Ichabod. So
With an RSVP.
This is basically his biggest chance. It's the equivalent in a teen movie about the prom night. Yeah.
His students haven't been educated in a week.
Not for nothing, but Old Chalk used to have drugs in it, just saying.
Maybe that's the point. A little bit of motivation, you could say.
That would explain how he can move like that.
And
yeah, he's just high all the time.
And the Quarrels, a local horse called Gunpowder in the book. This choice will actually be important for the purpose of the climax, believe it or not. It's just that the movie, it's taking its time to tell.
Yes.
And of course, being part of the package era, this means that we need to get an extended dance sequence, because again, the animators at Disney back then were absolutely in love with the square dance.
Hey, he's even dressed like a stun during that one scene too.
Well, again, it's interesting to note the fact that, despite being the town hero and everything, Brom is not particularly talented in dancing, which you would think that he would be, instead able to. While instead it's Ichabod the one that shines about it.
My guess is that Braum is more used to just being the town champ, essentially, so he doesn't need to know the courting finesse as much as with this one.
Sore loser.
Oh.
Why, yes, this was the same studio that made the dance scenes from Fantasia.
This other girl is actually named also in this version, but I forgot actually what her name is.
I believe her name is Tilda.
I think so.
Forget if she's a character from the original tale or not.
It's not super important because, like I said, even in the original tale, the other major inhabitants of the town are not super expanded.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to make the joke about it based on what you said earlier, but yeah, no, this really is going to be the next 5 minutes of the movie.
Mm-hmm. Jesus.
Wow, dude. This is why you're single.
Yeah.
I mean, it begs the question why he hasn't gotten laid until this point.
Her laugh sounds very similar to Madame Min's laugh.
Also, Tilda looks like she's a prototype for the Queen of Hearts, too.
What year was Sword in the Stone, Pedro? I think it was 1959?
No, 1963, if I remember correctly. It was 60s,
Okay.
I know that.
Okay.
Silver Age, yeah.
Alright. Yeah, apparently Ichabod scored a perfect at the ribbon game. But this is where things get more interesting. I hope you enjoyed all the comedy while it is present. Now it's time to enter the horror part of the story, because it's still Halloween after all, and this gives Brom the perfect opportunity to shine. Also, notice the fact that he had a sandwich in the previous frame. And now it's
Yeah.
gone. And now it's time for the song. Actually, the more memorable part of the movie.
He ate the sandwich really fast.
Basically, Braum noticed that Ichabod's pretty superstitious.
Yes, that's his major character flaw of Ichabod, aside from being a jerk, being very susceptible to, stories of the supernatural. And there's Anton's ancestor from Ratatouille, okay? Like, random scene. That's only just for that scene alone. So yeah, I also love what this story basically implicitly tells that it's a bit more resonant to this day. So it wasn't just on the physical level that the colonists invaded the land of the natives. No, they imported also their cryptids, because the headless horseman is a dullahan, a Celtic spirit without a head. So they basically migrated also that from the UK.
Yeah.
Bottomless teapot.
There's always time for tea, Shiro. Pay also attention to everything that Braun does, because it's basically part of, the final summation that the ending gives. And I guess this spirit is an equal opportunity one, which puts him actually on a higher moral ground than most of the people at the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's also worth noting to showcase the contrast. While Katrina, she is just enjoying this on a fun kind of level, almost like a joke. Ichabod is completely, entranced by it and scared shit. Brom, in his own song, offers an opportunity to escape. Yeah, this is based on old folklore in which the undead cannot cross quote-unquote running water, but it has never been really consistent as a rule, so just take it for the worth that it has over this story alone. Basically, if you ever wonder why the witch in the Wicked Witch of the West melts when Dorothy throws water on her hair, it's part of the same kind of ruling, believe it or not.
Too many chili flakes.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that was a nice party.
Yeah. Now, and for some reason, despite this particular story and the suggestion, Ichabod still decides to wait until, everything is over and to return to the rest of the town alone. Without anyone else. We don't even see him saying goodbye to the others as well. We have to assume he just decided to go alone.
Okay, one thing in the original tale is that apparently, he does propose to Katrina at the party, but she rejects his advances, which makes him leave the party early, heartbroken, essentially. I'm wondering if that may have been a cutscene.
Possible.
But yeah, for whatever reason, he decided to go alone. And I guess the way to Katrina's process led him through Snow White's evil forest.
Yeah, it's exactly through the place where Brom had told him,
Remember,
it might have been a bad idea to go through.
Remember, Jova, we also did this in Beauty and the Beast. For whatever reason, Disney protagonists always have to go through the creepy path full of evil-looking trees.
Like,
That's
I guess
just tradition.
to give Maurice credit, he at least thought that was a shortcut. I mean, mind you, that was still some literal Darwin Award behavior, but at least he had a reason. Here, Ichabod really didn't think maybe I should at least stay the night. I'm sure Katrina wouldn't mind. Firsty thing.
There's a moment from Dave the Barbarian that does a good job parrying this kind of stuff. Oh, can you tell us how we can get to the shopping mountain? Oh, you have to go through here where a gigantic monster is waiting for you. And then you have to go past the perilous trail, a trail that no man has ever crossed. Or you can take a taxi. Or you can take a taxi.
Jesus.
I mean, at least he
Also-
has a horse. Like,
That's actually a good observation, Shir. If you pay attention, the horse doesn't seem to be particularly fazed by all of this.
Also, funny, we have a horse whose name
Yeah,
is
that's the good part.
Gunpowder, and
Usually-
another...
And however,
Yeah,
it's
usually-
dynamite. Yes, go on.
Usually this era of Disney always give the horses some kind of personality. For whatever reason, this horse is just...
Oh, don't worry, Pedro.
Oh,
Wait,
don't
just
worry,
you
it'll
wait.
come.
Also, this is Halloween night in the Northern Hemisphere for North America, so I have to assume the temperature is not that high, and yet, because of a fear, Ichabod is sweating this profusely.
Yep. Gotta
and
love
now
how
we're in
even
one of
the...
Disney's haunted house rides.
Yeah, you gotta love how even the animation style took a bit of a shift.
Also, if you paid attention, Bing Crosby has stopped talking, by the way, for a while now. And we're only gonna get one line before the ending from him.
Giddy up, horsey. Giddy up.
Stop sitting on the
Wait a minute,
gravestone.
but if that's not his horse clipping, whose horse is it?
Whoa, come on, horsey. When I say go, I mean go.
That's just the cattails.
Of course, having all this kind of tension and being released by realizing how much of it was just a suggestion, of course that would mean everyone will burst into laughter immediately. Yeah, to the point of madness almost.
Well, he's correct. Oh well.
Well, there's only 5 minutes left, so I guess it'll just be a good, relaxing time.
Hilarious. Yeah, and that's where the real things have to pop up. And yeah, all of a
There
sudden,
it is.
background red because it's time to scare the shit out of the kids.
Yes. Yeah, but again, it's like in the Page Master. Ooh, a dramatic moment. Okay, need a red filter.
Thankfully, again, this chase sequence still maintains at least a bit of comedy, mostly out of both Gunpowder and Ichabod, because otherwise, yeah, the kids would probably be a bit too traumatized. Mainly also by the fact that they gave the Headless Horseman, Steve the red eyes. Just in case you weren't getting that.
Although that is one interesting thing, that his horse does seem to resemble Dynamite.
Also, just the way the cape is animated, like, that must have taken so much.
Oh no, you can tell, they poured so much into the last 5 minutes of this movie with this chase. Also, gotta give Gunpowder credit. When he's stressed out, that horse goes from being an old plow horse to a racehorse.
Survival instinct.
Mm-hmm.
Not going that way. What I love about it is the otherworldly nature of the Headless Horseman's animation. Like, Ichabod's animated traditionally, whereas the Headless Horseman is animated like how pretty much Bambi was during the fire sequence.
The laughter of the Headless Horseman is provided by Billy Bletcher, which from what I understand, he was voicing a bunch of Disney villainous characters at the time, so I'm not too surprised.
If this was movement today, probably they would just have Corey Burton do it.
Mm-hmm. Jesus.
This chase is so badass that some people actually watch the movie just for this sequence too, which, well, like Tio mentioned, when you get down to it, the horror element kind of can blindside you with how pretty much this tale is comedic up to this point, and yeah, wrong horse.
I love that the music has to stop for a second just for the joke to catch up. So, let's see, is it true that crossing the bridge is enough? Well,
it may be, but he threw his head at him.
And we cut to the next day, and we don't know what happened. Imagine being a child watching this, and the movie hits you. Remind Pedro for the audience, what was that quote from Don Bluth?
That kids can handle anything as long as there's a happy ending.
Well, tough shit for that.
Cry about it.
Well, look at that. Braun gets the girl after
Now,
all.
but now, however, there were supposed rumors that Ichabod was still alive and married somewhere else. Maybe he was potentially just scared shit, but the town seems to believe otherwise.
One thing that was also changed from the original tale, also, yeah, one less jump scare for your kids.
And it ends like this. Yeah, sure, let's have a reprise of a more happy song, by the way.
Oh,
and
just
that was the story of how Ichabod died. Good night, kids.
Line.
You scare Bing Crosby. How dare you, movie?
Yeah, even
But
even
yeah.
even Bing Crosby, the narrator, is scared of this shit.
Just want to one thing I should emphasize also in the original tale, the horse actually did show back up at his master's gate all alone, but Ichabod was gone, which did give the implication that Ichabod at least got away. In this version, we don't even hear from the horse.
But
so...
that's the thing. That's the thing of the ambiguity, because if you don't know anything about the original tale, this respects basically the possible interpretation. Technically, the original tale goes for two, but there's a third one that some adaptation did. One, the headless horseman is real, and subsequently Ichabod was either murdered or scared shit by it. Or two, it's Brom in disguise, after all. The story has provided plenty of hints about the matter by having the steed being identical, Brom being very capable of doing that, Brom using a similar head, pumpkin head with a light inside during the song, and having the same type of cavalry saber in it. And we know
pretty convenient that the Headless Horseman shows up right after Brom told the tale.
And for the purpose of the story, let's be real, even if it wasn't just for scary Ichabod shit, Brom technically had the motive, the opportunity, and the method. Basically, he wanted a good interpretation is that he used this excuse to murder Ichabod and get away with it. It's technically a very valuable, interpretation of the story, including this very adaptation, by the way. Some adaptations actually opt for a third option that initially it is Brom, but then the real Headless Horseman shows up, so they play a bit more of the Scooby-Doo prank similar to Zombie Island, kinda, but it's not what this adaptation goes for. But yeah, imagine a child that knows nothing about this and is just, hit with this. Holy shit.
And then they all died.
I mean, and the messed up thing is you could maybe argue that Katrina will be happier marrying Brom, since maybe he truly did love her and wasn't just getting her for the money, but still pretty messed up if that is the case all the same that he murdered the hypotenuse.
Like me and Java mentioned, when Tim Burton made his version of the story, he did change things up quite a bit, but still respected overall the themes. If anything, he kind of took them to their natural conclusion, as in why the Van Tassels would own this much of a property, would it add potentially any consequences, and so on. Maybe I'll pick that, in the future, just to give it a show, but for the time being, final thoughts on these versions.
This is one of the better of the compilation films, definitely, if anything, because both stories are perfectly self-contained, and it doesn't really and they're both fun stories. More so the second one, in my opinion, because the second one is overall more entertaining. And yeah, that ending is deliciously fucked up, because why not, right?
When me and Pedro showed this to Deji, it's not fair to say that he didn't get it, but he was a bit disappointed because he believed that the story, at least his interpretation of the story, just stops while he thinks he should have got a conclusion to it.
I can kind of get his mentality there. Now, to give him credit, this is more or less a straight adaptation of a story. That being said, as Disney have shown, sometimes a story that old could stand for some improvements here and there. Maybe it was complete back then, but by today's standards, it is a bit short. Granted, it is a fable, so, I could think of a few ways to maybe make it feel like it doesn't end as abruptly. I personally am fine with it, but I can get maybe where he was coming from.
Go on, Pedro.
No, that's basically it. It's fun. The first story is incredibly British, and yeah, Mr. Toad needs to be put in the mental asylum. I don't think prison is enough. And yeah, the Sleepy Hollow storyline is pretty enjoyable as well. I especially like the idea of this woman just egging these two on in particular. Except unlike with Twilight, there does seem to be a somewhat self-awareness of what's going on here. And it's just played for laughs, unlike what happens with Twilight, where we're supposed to believe this is deep shit, yo.
Very romantic.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's enjoyable, definitely. Definitely one of the better ones. I think I still prefer the one that has the Peter in the Wall. I forgot which one it is.
Yeah, I forgot the name, the specific name, but yeah, I get it.
Because Peter and the Wolf is one of my favorite fables, so obviously I'm going to be biased towards that one. But this one is still pretty good by the standards of these package films. Definitely one of the better ones.
All right, Shirai.
Yeah, these were pretty fun. Quite different in tone. I mean, in parts. You know, the second one was mostly lighthearted until the end. But yes, I like the fact that you could interpret that ending in many ways. My brain tends to go for the more fucked up ones.
So murder.
Yeah.
So do you think it was Brom or it was an actual headless horseman?
It's funnier to think that it was Brom.
Like, that would show he went from comedic attempts to, okay, time for gruesome murder.
They did, I mean, bro was desperate.
Mm-hmm.
Debatable whether he was that desperate, but you know, it's there. Animation was great. It was fun. But yes, some very British voices going on in here. I think that's it, really. I don't know if I have a preference for one over the other because the stories themselves are quite different. But yeah, I liked both.
All right, Jova.
Yeah, no, I like both of these movies. I'll admit, part of me does kind of wish we could have seen what the full-length features would have been like. But to be fair, what we have is so incredibly well put together that I honestly do have to wonder if it would have just been padding on both their parts if they had done full-length ventures here and there.
It's a bit similar to what I thought when we did Ben and Me for the Independence Day.
Yeah. I mean, granted, with that one, there's definitely a lot of substance to work with, since, you know, that could have legit just been the life and times of Benjamin Franklin. But yeah, I mean, and I have seen adaptations of Sleepy Hollow that have extended the narrative pretty well. In fact, one of them is actually a TV series where, get this, the Headless Horseman is actually an old betrayed friend of Ichabod's, essentially.
Of course, making it more personal, I guess.
Yeah. I will say my favorite adaptation is probably still the Tim Burton version. Like, I will give it this, even though it's a different adaptation, they do pay some homages to the original tale, which are good for me. But
there are
this
some
version,
even direct shout out to this very animated adaptation, believe it or not. Again, I saw this.
Yeah.
I saw that one recently with Deji, and some scenes in particular are almost lifted up. You can tell that despite
Definitely
having
feels
his
like
version
it.
in mind, Tim Burton still wanted to homage this.
Which, you know, I can't blame him. Like, both of these movies packaged in here are absolute classics. Like, I'd say this is possibly a contender for my favorite of the package era films. At the very least, they are top tier. Well, they're top tier in many ways. The animation is great. They managed to have good action scenes that help keep you from getting bored, essentially. Not that I think you'll get bored even, because the comedy is also on point here. Now, if I had to say which half I like better, I'm gonna have to give that to the Sleepy Hollow half, which, to be fair, as I'm aware, I'm not alone in that idea because, again, the Mr. Toad section is good, great even. But the Sleepy Hollow section is legendary. If not the whole thing, that final chase, which again is one of the most celebrated pieces of animation I've seen throughout the animation community.
I'm gonna raise it a new
regard.
one, Jova. That segment alone should have been a single super boss encounter in a Kingdom Hearts game. The fact that it hasn't happened yet is criminal.
Honestly, yeah, like, I would totally be for a Sleepy Hollow world, or at the very least, a Headless Horseman boss. I mean, and a
As long
Julius...
as long as it's not an exclamation bow, I'm fine.
I mean, hell, if Julius could show up out of nowhere in Kingdom Hearts 3D, I'm sure we could have the Headless Horseman show up in, like, a World of Darkness or something as a super boss.
Especially because even in Universe, if you pay attention to the song, you know, the Headless Horseman is supposedly high rank among ghosts and everything. So if we go by hierarchy that's established by the rest of the canon, you know, he's kind of a bit up there with Maleficent. if you think about it. So, not even a small fry.
Mhm. Now, whether or not that was Brom, the Headless Horseman would be treated as his own character in other bits of media, like Darkwing Duck of all things, believe that or not. And also, of course, House of Mouse. He even showed up in Once Upon a Studio.
Yeah, both Ichabod and the Headless Horseman showed up in Once Upon a Studio. Hilariously, the Headless Horseman's his cameo is in the boys' bathroom, while everyone is combing their head. Even he, despite he hasn't. And Ichabod almost gets decapitated by Goofy when he's actually swinging the ladder. Poor bastard.
Nice so much. But yeah, no, both the halves of this movie are great. Like, there's not too much to say. Like, they're good animation exploits, but they tell the stories in nice, packed up ways, essentially. The Mr. Toad section is full of laughs and, well, like Shuri mentioned, some concern that Toad may be suffering from just more than one addiction, and maybe he needs mental help, essentially. But hey, all's well that ends well on his side. As for the Sleepy Hollow side, yeah, it's an interesting take. It's not particularly clear on who's the good guy or who's the bad guy. Well, I mean, the main antagonist is agreed to be the Headless Horseman, but again, that might be Brahm. And if that were Brahm, I guess the question would be, was that Brahm just acting in his own self-interest, or was it Brahm who saved Katrina from a loveless marriage? Now, on the other side, you could argue that Ichabod was truly falling in love with Katrina. Heck, according to the original tale, he is heartbroken when she rejects him, essentially. Now, whether that's about the money or the love is up for another debate, but again, that just goes to show that there's never really a clear bad guy in this narrative, essentially. Either way, though, for what it is, it's entertaining in the comedic segments, and it's terrifying in the horror segment. I mean, I gotta say, though, it says something when, 3 to 5 minutes of animation pretty much guarantee that this movie works as a Halloween picture, but, well, there you go. That's just how effective it is. Which does make me wonder in that regard, did they shoot this for a, Halloween or Christmas release?
Oh, let me check when the release date
October
was.
5th. So I guess this went for a...
And this was 1949, so the war was over at this point, so more countries were starting to, open their theaters again to, import stuff from the USA, which again, it showed because, again, the year after this, Disney started swinging with the Silver Age with Cinderella.
I'm guessing that they went for the Halloween release. I say this also because most posters I've looked up for this movie seem to emphasize much more the Sleepy Hollow half of it, whereas the Mr. Toad is, also there. The most that mixes them together is a poster showing Toad driving in a car while also being chased by the Headless Horseman along with Ichabod. But yeah, it seems like this movie definitely emphasized the Sleepy Hollow half. It's not to say the Toad half is any lesser, it's just, again, I'm willing to bet good money people remember this more for the Headless Horseman. Alright, but no, honestly, it's a great film. It's one I recommend if you haven't seen before.
Alright, I'll conclude.
Tio.
Yeah, I'll conclude. No, again, this is very enjoyable, at the end of the day. I honestly don't even mind that much the Wind of the Willows adaptation. Again, I probably need to get to actually check the original story in some kind of fashion, or I see one of the other adaptations at some point. But for what it is here, it's fine. It's perfectly enjoyable. Now, the real star of the show is the Sleepy Hollow part, which is, just very well done. Bing Crosby, if you don't know anything about Bing Crosby, he really was a very accomplished singer and actor. So, he brings his weight onto the table for this one, including also, obviously, the songs. And again, the fact that the ambiguity is kept, and this is very unusual for a Disney adaptation because, in order to keep the ambiguity in check, they forego actually going for the traditional epilogue or, more relaxed type of ending. Sure, there is a final narration that tries to explain a bit, but it still keeps that kind of ambiguity that will leave someone, the young audience who watches this movie completely befuddled, into what happened. That's great, honestly. And I guess it works a bit better than the rest of the package, era, because those were really presented more as anthology with a very thin layer of, of a connecting device. And while this is true also for this one, it drops a bit more the pretense in this case, No, again, I really enjoyed it. The animation, the music, everything is pretty great. And honestly, because of the Tim Burton version, I don't even think this is the one of the products that that warrants the live action remake treatment. I think, despite the difference with adaptation in mind, this is perfectly fine on its own. But still, I want that super boss fight in Kingdom Hearts. Get to it, Square, please. I'll take that over having to listen to the entirety of Let It Go another time. All right, that's pretty much it. Like I said, maybe in the future we will do the Tim Burton version. Who knows? We'll have to see, but that's all for Halloween. So tune in eventually next year for, I don't know, we'll see what do. Well, we continue the Chucky stories like we promised, but we'll see what the rest of that happens. And the next up will be instead Jova's birthday, where we don't really stray that much away from Disney territory. So see you for that.
See you then.
So, yep.